December 21st, 1939. Kola front, Finnish-Soviet border. A figure dressed entirely in white lies motionless in the snow, his breath barely visible in the 40-degree air. Simo Häyhä, a 33-year-old Finnish farmer turned sniper, squints through his iron sights at a Soviet officer 450 meters away. The Red Army soldier falls silently, becoming kill number 219 for the man the Russians would soon call Belaya Smert, the White Death. As Häyhä melts back into the frozen landscape, Soviet troops frantically scan the tree line, seeing nothing but endless white. How could one man become Stalin's most feared nightmare on the Finnish front? The Winter War had begun just 3 weeks earlier, when Stalin's Soviet Union launched a massive invasion of Finland on November 30th, 1939. The Soviet leader expected a swift victory against his tiny neighbor, a nation of just 4 million facing the might of a superpower with 168 million citizens. The Red Army deployed 450,000 troops, 2,000 tanks, and 1,000 aircraft against Finland's modest force of 300,000 soldiers with just 32 tanks and 114 aircraft. Soviet propaganda confidently declared they would be in Helsinki within 2 weeks. But the Soviets hadn't accounted for men like Simo Häyhä. Standing just 5'3" tall, this humble dairy farmer and recreational hunter from Rautjärvi had joined the Finnish Civil Guard in 1925, developing exceptional marksmanship skills. Lieutenant Arne Jutelainen, Häyhä's commanding officer, would later recall, "He was a very simple man who lived modestly, but with a rifle in his hands, he became something else entirely. What made Häyhä exceptional wasn't advanced technology, but primitive efficiency. While other snipers used scoped rifles, Häyhä preferred iron sights to avoid lens glare that might reveal his position. He packed snow in his mouth to prevent his breath from creating telltale vapor clouds. His white camouflage was complete. A snow-covered ghost who could kill without warning. General Andrei Vlasov, commanding Soviet forces in the sector, became increasingly frustrated as mysterious casualties mounted. "Find this Finnish devil and eliminate him immediately," he ordered, according to Soviet military archives. "He is destroying our officer corps." The Soviets deployed counter-snipers and conducted artillery barrages, specifically targeting areas where they suspected Häyhä operated. As January 1940 arrived, Finnish intelligence officer Captain Eero Koko documented the growing Soviet hysteria. Their radio transmissions repeatedly mention a white-clad devil. Prisoners speak of him with terror. The psychological impact of Häyhä's growing legend spread throughout Soviet ranks. Soldiers refused orders to advance into certain sectors, believing the White Death waited for them. By mid-January, Häyhä's tally approached 300 confirmed kills. Each day, this solitary figure would move through the frozen forest before dawn, create a small bed in the snow, and wait patiently as Soviet troops entered his killing zone. The temperature often plunged to 45 degrees, conditions that would kill most men, but which Häyhä had trained in his entire life. As Soviet casualties mounted, Stalin himself reportedly demanded briefings on the Finnish sniper problem. The man who had purged his own military leadership now watched helplessly as a humble farmer systematically eliminated his officer corps on the Kola front. The White Death was becoming Stalin's most unexpected nightmare. As the Finnish winter of 1939-1940 deepened, the methodology of Simo Häyhä crystallized into something beyond mere marksmanship. it became a lethal science, meticulously refined through decades of hunting in the same forest now crawling with Soviet soldiers. Lieutenant Arne Jutelainen, Häyhä's commanding officer, would later document, "He had a natural instinct that cannot be taught. He understood the forest in ways that made him virtually invisible. Häyhä's approach was methodical, almost mathematical in its precision. Unlike other snipers who might take 2 or 3 shots in a day, Häyhä averaged 5 confirmed kills daily during the 105-day Winter War. On his most lethal day, December 21st, 1939, he eliminated 25 Soviet soldiers in a single continuous operation lasting from dawn until dusk. Soviet intelligence reports, declassified decades later, revealed that entire units refused deployment to sectors where the White Death was known to operate. The secret to Häyhä's unprecedented success lay in his unorthodox techniques. While Soviet snipers used scopes that could fog or reflect sunlight, Häyhä relied exclusively on iron sights. Captain Arne Ahonen of the Finnish 34th Infantry Regiment noted, "He believed a man should see what he kills with his naked eye. The scope was for men who needed help. Häyhä needed none." Temperatures during the Winter War regularly plunged to 40 degrees Celsius, conditions that would freeze the breath of most snipers, creating visible vapor clouds that revealed their positions. Häyhä countered this by packing his mouth with snow, preventing his breath from condensing in the frigid air. He wore all white, becoming a phantom against Finland's snow-blanketed landscape. Soviet counter-snipers sent specifically to eliminate him described the experience as hunting a ghost. Häyhä's knowledge of the terrain proved decisive. Having grown up hunting in the forest near Rautjärvi, he understood how sound traveled across snow, how light filtered through pine branches, and where natural depressions would conceal his 5/3 frame. Major General Siilasvuo, commander of the Finnish 9th Division, would later write, "He turned nature itself into a weapon. The forest was as much his ally as any Finnish soldier." The psychological impact on Soviet forces was devastating. By January 1940, NKVD reports documented plummeting morale among Red Army units facing the Kola front where Häyhä operated. Colonel Pyotr Loganov of the Soviet 56th Division recorded in his field journal, "Men speak of a Finnish devil who cannot be killed. They call him Belaya Smert, the White Death. Some refuse night patrols, believing he can see in darkness." Stalin's military leadership grew increasingly frustrated. Artillery barrages were ordered specifically to target suspected sniper positions. Soviet reconnaissance planes flew dangerously low, searching for a single man among endless white. Yet Häyhä continued his deadly work, adapting to each new countermeasure. When Soviet forces began using dogs to track him, he laid false trails through freezing streams. When they deployed counter-snipers, he would remain motionless for hours, outlasting them in the bitter cold that claimed Soviet lives even without bullets. January 1940. The Kremlin, Moscow. Joseph Stalin slams his fist on the mahogany desk, scattering papers across the floor. Intelligence reports from the Finnish front describe a phantom sniper decimating Soviet forces with unprecedented precision. "How can one man cause such damage?" Stalin demands. The room falls silent. No one dares mention that this Finnish marksman has already eliminated over 200 Red Army soldiers in just 2 months of fighting. The Winter War has become a humiliation for the Soviet war machine. What should have been a swift annexation of Finnish territory has devolved into a bloody stalemate, with Soviet casualties mounting daily. At the center of this embarrassment stands one man, Simo Häyhä, a humble farmer turned lethal ghost in the snow. By February 1940, Soviet military intelligence had compiled a substantial dossier on the man Finnish troops called White Death. NKVD reports described him as a 5'3" former farmer and hunter with unparalleled woodland skills. Colonel Dmitry Volkogonov later wrote in his memoirs, Stalin became personally fixated on eliminating this Finnish sniper. The psychological impact of one man killing hundreds had become a strategic liability. Soviet High Command implements 3 distinct operations to eliminate Häyhä. Operation Belay Prizrak, White Ghost, deploys specialized counter-sniper teams to Häyhä's known hunting grounds. 22 experienced marksmen from the Soviet 54th Division are sent with explicit orders to prioritize Häyhä's elimination over all other objectives. Within 2 weeks, Soviet records show 20 of these counter-snipers were themselves killed, most with the signature single shot to the head that had become Häyhä's trademark. March 1940. The Karelian Isthmus. Major Ivan Kudryavtsev receives new orders directly from Moscow. Artillery solution authorized for single-target elimination. For the first time in military history, an entire artillery battery is directed to target one man. Soviet 100 mm howitzers begin systematic bombardment of areas where Häyhä's kills have been reported. Over 3 days, more than 200 shells rain down on suspected sniper positions. Scene cue. Snow-covered forest illuminated by artillery. Flashes. Trees splintering under the barrage. Yet Häyhä continues his grim harvest. Finnish Lieutenant Arne Juutilainen later recorded, the Russians became so desperate they would shell entire sectors based on a single rifle report. Meanwhile, Simo would be kilometers away, adding to his tally. By mid-March, Soviet intelligence estimates Häyhä's kill count has surpassed 400. The psychological impact on Soviet troops is devastating. Frontline diaries reveal soldiers refusing to advance, convinced the White Death awaits them. Political officer Grigory Danilov reported, men are shooting at shadows. Unit cohesion deteriorates at the mere mention of the Finnish sniper. The final Soviet operation against Häyhä involves infiltration teams, small units of NKVD-trained special operatives disguised in white camouflage, mirroring Häyhä's own techniques. 5 such teams penetrate Finnish lines between March 3-6, 1940. None return. Finnish records later captured by the Soviets indicate all 15 operatives were killed, with at least 9 bearing Häyhä's unmistakable marksmanship signature. The psychological warfare escalates. Soviet propaganda units use loudspeakers to broadcast bounty announcements across no man's land. 500,000 rubles for the man who kills the White Death. It is the highest bounty Stalin's government has ever placed on a single enemy combatant. The Faceless Terror. Psychological impact on Soviet forces January 1940. Kola Front, Finland. The temperature plummets to 40 degrees as Soviet soldiers huddle around meager fires, their breath crystallizing in the frigid air. What terrifies them isn't just the cold. It's the invisible death that stalks them through the endless white. They call him Belaya Smirt, the White Death, a phantom who has already claimed hundreds of their comrades. Some refuse to venture out in daylight. Others pray before each patrol. Many will never return. We never saw him. Not once, recalled Lieutenant Dmitry Volkogonov of the 122nd Division in his war diary. Men would fall beside me with a bullet through the head. Perfect shots. No sound of gunfire. just death arriving without warning. The fear was unbearable. By February 1940, the psychological impact of Simo Häyhä's lethal precision had transformed from mere battlefield losses into something far more devastating, a complete collapse of Soviet morale. NKVD political officer Ivan Petrov documented in his reports, "Soldiers refuse orders to advance. They speak of a Finnish devil who cannot be killed." Desertion rates have increased 41% in sectors where the sniper is active. This is no longer merely a military problem, but a crisis of will. Commissar Leonid Gorokov implemented desperate countermeasures. Artillery bombardments targeting suspected sniper positions cost thousands of shells per day. Specialized counter-sniper teams were deployed, only to disappear into the snow. The Soviets even brought in their own legendary marksman, Vasily Zaitsev, hero of Stalingrad, to hunt the Finnish ghost. Nothing worked. The pivotal realization came on February 24, 1940, when Colonel General Vladimir Dukhonin of the Northwestern Front received the compiled intelligence reports. The documents revealed the staggering truth. A single Finnish farmer with no formal military training beyond basic service had killed over 500 Soviet soldiers. The statistical impossibility of it struck Dukhonin like physical blow. "One man cannot be allowed to halt the advance of the Red Army," Dukhonin reportedly told his staff. Yet the evidence was undeniable. In areas where Häyhä operated, Soviet advances slowed by 64%. Casualty rates among officers were 3.8 times higher than normal combat zones. The psychological effect had transformed into a strategic liability. Scene Q. A trembling hand marks red X's on a map of the Kola front, each representing a soldier fallen to the White Death. In the forest near Kola, Soviet soldiers developed superstitions. They wouldn't light cigarettes for fear the ember would draw Häyhä's eye. They stopped wearing rank insignia. Some wrote letters home speaking of a supernatural force protecting Finland. Psychological warfare reports from NKVD archives reveal commissars struggled to contain these counter-revolutionary superstitions as they spread through the ranks. "The men speak of him as though he were not human," wrote political commissar Mikhail Borodin. "This Finnish sniper has become something more dangerous than a man. He has become a symbol that the Soviet soldier cannot defeat." In Stalin's war room in Moscow, the reports of this single Finnish marksman eventually reached the Soviet leader himself. For a regime built on the collective strength of the masses, the idea that one man could halt the Red Army was more than a military embarrassment. It was an ideological crisis. The White Death had become Stalin's worst nightmare, proof that the individual could still triumph over the collective might of Soviet power. December 1939. The thermometer reads -40 degrees Celsius in the forests of Kola. The landscape is a blank canvas of white, punctuated only by the dark silhouettes of pine trees. In this frozen wasteland, Simo Häyhä becomes death incarnate. The Finnish farmer turned sniper moves like a phantom through terrain most men find uninhabitable, leaving behind only corpses and whispered legends. Häyhä's deadly efficiency stems not from advanced technology, but from primitive ingenuity. Unlike other snipers, he refuses to use telescopic sights. "They might reflect sunlight and give away my position," he later explains in his war diary. Instead, he relies on iron sights, a decision that requires him to get closer to his targets but makes him nearly impossible to detect. Soviet counter-snipers sent to eliminate him find themselves becoming his victims instead. Lieutenant General Valvan of the Finnish Army observes in his January 1940 field report, Häyhä's methods are unorthodox but devastatingly effective. He operates alone, requiring no spotter, and returns with confirmed kills that would be unbelievable if not meticulously documented. The documentation becomes a psychological weapon itself. Soviet intelligence reports capture the growing dread among Russian troops, who begin calling him Belaya Smert, the White Death. His preparation is methodical, almost ritualistic. Before dawn, Häyhä packs snow into his mouth to prevent his breath from creating visible vapor in the frigid air. He covers himself in white camouflage so complete that Finnish patrols occasionally mistake him for a snowdrift. Most critically, he packs the snow in front of his position, preventing the telltale puff that occurs when a bullet displaces loose powder. Captain Arne Jutelainen, Häyhä's commanding officer in the 34th Infantry Regiment, notes in February 1940, he selects his firing positions with uncanny foresight, often preparing multiple locations before dawn. By the time Soviet forces identify where shots are coming from, he has already relocated. This tactical mobility makes conventional counter-sniper operations futile. The psychological impact on Soviet forces becomes measurable. Field Marshal Semyon Timoshenko orders specialized units to hunt down the Finnish devil, as morale among frontline Soviet troops deteriorates. Reconnaissance reports show Soviet soldiers refusing to advance into certain sectors where Häyhä is rumored to operate. A captured Soviet lieutenant confesses under interrogation, "Men would rather face disciplinary action than patrol the areas where the White Death hunts." Perhaps most remarkable is Häyhä's secondary weapon, the Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. On days when sniping proves impractical, he infiltrates Soviet positions and engages at close quarters, accumulating over 200 confirmed kills with this weapon alone. These raids further cement his supernatural reputation among enemy forces. By March 1940, Häyhä's kill count exceeds 500, averaging 5 men per day throughout the Winter War. Soviet intelligence places him at the top of their elimination priority list, allocating disproportionate resources to locate and destroy a single Finnish farmer. Stalin himself reportedly demands daily updates on efforts to neutralize the White Death, the man who has become his army's most terrifying nightmare. January 1940. The Kremlin. Joseph Stalin slams his fist on the mahogany desk, scattering papers bearing the latest casualty reports from Finland. The Soviet leader's face contorts with rage as an aide nervously explains that a single Finnish sniper has now killed over 200 Red Army soldiers. "Find this man and eliminate him," Stalin orders, his voice cold with fury. He makes a mockery of the world's greatest army. By mid-January, the name Simo Häyhä had become a whispered curse among Soviet troops stationed along the Kola front. Political officer Dmitry Shostakovich noted in his field report, "The men speak of a ghost in white who kills without sound or warning. Morale deteriorates with each new death." Stalin's mounting frustration manifested in increasingly desperate measures. On January 22, 1940, NKVD Commander Lavrenti Beria authorized Operation White Hunt, a dedicated task force of 20 elite Soviet snipers and scouts with a single mission: locate and eliminate the man now known as the White Death. Major Ivan Sidorenko, the USSR's most decorated sniper instructor, personally selected the team members. We chose only those with winter warfare experience and exceptional marksmanship, Sidorenko later wrote in his memoirs. Each man understood this was a direct order from Stalin himself. The hunting party deployed to the Kola region with specialized equipment, white camouflage suits, the latest PU-scoped Mosin Nagant rifles, and enhanced spotting tools. Their primary tactic involved establishing overlapping fields of fire in areas where Häyhä had been most active. Soviet intelligence gathered from prisoners and observations indicated Häyhä operated primarily in a 3-square-kilometer section of dense forest. The Soviets deployed artillery to systematically shell these woods, firing over 1,000 rounds in a single day, an extraordinary expenditure of ammunition to target one man, February 6, 1940. A captured Finnish supply officer reveals under interrogation that Soviet casualties from Häyhä's rifle had now surpassed 400. Stalin, receiving this intelligence, reportedly smashed a glass against the wall and demanded daily updates on the hunt. The Soviets escalated further. Reconnaissance planes flew dangerous low-altitude missions over the Kola front, searching for any sign of the elusive sniper. Radio intercepts from this period reveal Soviet command's growing obsession. Directive 228. All units to report any confirmed or suspected sightings of the White Death sniper. Priority intelligence. The psychological impact was devastating. Lieutenant Alexei Kovalev wrote in his diary on February 12th, "Men refuse to take forward positions. They believe this Finnish devil can kill at impossible ranges. Some claim he is not human but a spirit of the forest. Desertion attempts have tripled." Perhaps most telling of Stalin's personal investment in eliminating Häyhä was the extraordinary bounty placed on his head. 700,000 rubles, equivalent to approximately $130,000 in today's currency, an unprecedented sum for a single enemy combatant. As Häyhä's kill count approached 500, Stalin authorized even more extreme measures. On February 21st, 1940, Soviet High Command diverted a full artillery battalion to saturate the entire Kola sector, where Häyhä operated. For 3 days, they fired over 5,000 shells into an area of just 4 square kilometers, expending ammunition that could have supported an entire division's advance. By February 1940, Simo Häyhä's kill count had surpassed 500 confirmed enemies. The psychological impact of this single Finnish sniper on Soviet forces was devastating and unprecedented in modern warfare. Soviet soldiers began referring to him in hushed tones as Belaya Smrt, the White Death, a name that spread like a virus of fear through the Red Army's ranks. Lieutenant General Dmitry Pavlov, commander of the 7th Army, received increasingly disturbing reports from the Kola front. Morale is deteriorating rapidly. One field report dated January 28, 1940, stated, "Men refuse to take forward positions, claiming the White Death will find them. Some units report soldiers shooting themselves in non-vital areas to be evacuated from the front." Scene Q. Soviet soldiers huddled around fires, eyes darting nervously toward the tree line, jumping at every sound. The psychological warfare intensified when Soviet propagandists tried countering Häyhä's legend. Political Commissar Lev Meklis ordered special bulletins claiming the White Death had been killed. Yet, when Finnish radio broadcasts continued celebrating new kills by Häyhä, the temporary relief among Soviet troops transformed into deeper despair. The White Death seemed immortal. "The men speak of him as if he were not human," wrote Captain Alexei Nikolaev in his field diary on February 2, 1940. They say bullets pass through him without effect. They say he can predict where a man will walk before the man himself knows. This superstition is more damaging than any artillery barrage. The Soviet High Command's response revealed their desperation. Artillery barrages, sometimes using hundreds of shells, were authorized to target areas where a single shot from Häyhä had been reported. Counter-snipers were deployed with the sole mission of eliminating him. Soviet intelligence offered substantial rewards for his death. This extraordinary allocation of resources to eliminate one man had no parallel in the Winter War. Major General Vladimir Grendel, artillery commander for the Northwestern Front, later admitted in a declassified 1941 report, "We expended approximately 5,200 artillery shells in targeted strikes against suspected positions of the Finnish marksman Häyhä during January-February 1940. The material and logistical cost was extreme and indefensible by conventional military assessment." Scene Q. Soviet artillery crews, frantically loading and firing into empty snow-covered forests. The psychological impact extended beyond the front-line soldiers. Stalin himself reportedly demanded daily updates on efforts to eliminate the White Death. When informed of Häyhä's seemingly impossible kill count, Stalin allegedly slammed his fist on the table and shouted at Defense Commissar Kliment Voroshilov, "How can one man stop a modern army? Find him and end this embarrassment." Perhaps most telling was the Soviet response when they finally believed they had succeeded in killing Häyhä on March 6, 1940, after an explosive bullet shattered his jaw. The news traveled with remarkable speed through Soviet communication, channels reaching Moscow within hours, a priority typically reserved for major strategic developments, not the status of a single enemy combatant. The White Death had become Stalin's worst nightmare, not merely for the hundreds of Soviet lives he had taken, but for the devastating effect on Soviet military confidence and the embarrassing revelation that one determined Finnish farmer could inflict such damage on the mighty Red Army. In the frozen forests of Kola, Simo Häyhä had achieved something extraordinary. He had transformed from a man into a legend, and in doing so, had weaponized fear itself. March 6, 1940. Kola Front, Finnish Karelia. The morning sun glints off fresh snow, casting long blue shadows across the frozen battlefield. Simo Häyhä, the man Soviet soldiers have come to call Belaya Smert, the White Death, scans the tree line through squinted eyes. His breath forms delicate clouds in the bitter cold. His tally stands at 505 confirmed kills, each one meticulously recorded in his small notebook, each one a Soviet soldier who will never return home, each one bringing Stalin's war machine to a grinding halt in these frozen forests. The silence is shattered by the distinctive crack of an explosive round. Soviet soldiers have spotted the phantom that has haunted them for 105 days of continuous combat. The explosive bullet strikes Häyhä directly in the face, tearing through his left jaw in a spray of crimson that stains the pristine snow. His body crumples, and for the first time since the Winter War began, the White Death falls silent. Lieutenant Arne Juutalainen, Häyhä's commanding officer, later recounted, "When they brought him in, half his face was missing. None of us believed he would survive the night." The Soviet soldiers who fired that fateful shot likely celebrated. The nightmare was over. The ghost sniper who had terrorized their ranks with supernatural precision was finally eliminated. The man who had killed more enemy combatants than any other sniper in recorded military history had fallen. But like so much in this brutal war, appearances were deceiving. Häyhä was evacuated to a field hospital where surgeons worked frantically to save his life. The damage was catastrophic. His jaw shattered, facial bones pulverized, tissue destroyed beyond recognition. He would remain in a coma for 11 days, regaining consciousness on March 17, 1940, the very day the Winter War officially ended with the signing of the Moscow Peace Treaty. The bullet took my face, but it did not take my life, Häyhä would later write in his memoirs. When I woke, Finland had lost the war, but survived as a nation. Field Marshal Carl Gustaf Emil Mannerheim, the commander-in-chief of Finnish forces, personally promoted Häyhä from corporal to second lieutenant, an unprecedented field promotion in Finnish military history. It remains the fastest rise in rank ever recorded in the Finnish army. The statistics of Häyhä's campaign are almost beyond comprehension. In just 105 days of combat, he accumulated 505 confirmed kills with his rifle and approximately 200 more with his Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. That averaged nearly 5 kills per day, often in temperatures dropping to 40 degrees and snow so deep it swallowed men whole, against an enemy that outnumbered Finnish forces 3-1. Soviet General Dmitry Pavlov would later acknowledge in his war assessment, the Finnish snipers cost us more men than their artillery. One man in particular became a terror weapon more effective than any tank or plane. Though Finland ceded 11% of its territory to the Soviet Union in the peace treaty, Stalin's forces had suffered catastrophic losses, over 126,000 dead or missing, compared to Finland's 25,000 casualties. A disproportionate number of those Soviet losses could be attributed to a single Finnish farmer with a rifle and a white camouflage suit. Häyhä would spend years recovering from his wounds. His face permanently disfigured, he retreated to a quiet life as a moose hunter and dog breeder. When asked years later how he had become such an accomplished sniper, he answered with characteristic Finnish simplicity. Practice. And I only did my duty, what I was told to do as well as I could, the invisible hunter. Häyhä's Deadly Tactics, December 1939. The Finnish wilderness. Temperature, minus 40 degrees Celsius. A small mound of snow shifts almost imperceptibly. Through a rifle scope, a Soviet officer appears in the crosshairs, his breath visible in the frigid air. The crack of a Mosin Nagant M28-30 rifle shatters the silence. Another Red Army soldier falls. Another notch for Simo Häyhä. Another ghost story for terrified Soviet troops to whisper in their foxholes. Häyhä's methodology was devastatingly simple, yet required extraordinary discipline. Unlike other snipers who used scopes, Häyhä preferred iron sights. Captain Arne Juutalainen, Häyhä's commanding officer in the 34th Infantry Regiment, later recalled, he avoided using telescopic sights, as they might reflect sunlight and reveal his position. The man seemed to become one with his surroundings. The Finnish hunter employed a systematic approach to killing that bordered on scientific precision. He would pack snow in his mouth to prevent his breath from creating telltale vapor clouds. He wore all white, meticulously camouflaging himself in snowdrifts. Most critically, he would pour water on the snow in front of his position, creating a smooth surface that wouldn't puff up when he fired. A detail that saved his life countless times, as frustrated Soviet counter-snipers searched in vain for any sign of disturbance. Major General Siilasvuo, commander of the Finnish forces in the Suomussalmi region, noted in his war diary, "Häyhä's tactics have become a psychological weapon. The enemy is becoming increasingly hesitant to move in daylight hours. Their morale suffers greatly from the invisible threat." Scene Q. A Soviet patrol moves cautiously through snow-laden pines, eyes darting nervously, weapons raised. A distant rifle crack echoes. One soldier drops without warning. Soviet command documents captured after the war revealed the extraordinary measures taken to eliminate the Finnish marksmen. Special sniper teams are to be deployed to Sector KR 355 with the explicit mission of eliminating the Finnish sharpshooter known to troops as Belaya Smrt, White Death. Read one order signed by Colonel Volkov of the 44th Division on January 21st, 1940. These counter-sniper teams would often employ artillery barrages on areas where they suspected Häyhä operated. Soviet snipers would set up elaborate traps, leaving themselves exposed in hopes of drawing fire and revealing Häyhä's position. None succeeded. Statistical analysis of Soviet casualty reports from the Kola front shows concentrated losses in sectors where Häyhä was known to operate, a testament to his lethal efficiency. Perhaps most remarkable was Häyhä's ability to operate in the brief Arctic daylight. Finnish winter days provided only 5 to 6 hours of dim light, conditions that would hamper most marksmen, yet Häyhä adapted, using the low angle of the sun to his advantage. He would position himself so that the sun was at his back, blinding potential targets and obscuring his own position. Lieutenant Heikki Nykänen, who fought alongside Häyhä, later testified. He seemed to have a sixth sense about when to move positions. Just when the Soviets thought they had him located, he would appear somewhere entirely different. The psychological effect on enemy troops cannot be overstated. They began seeing ghosts everywhere. As his kill count rose methodically, 100, 200, 300, Soviet command grew increasingly desperate. What they couldn't know was that the worst was yet to come. February 1940. The Kremlin. Joseph Stalin slams his fist against the polished oak of his desk, scattering intelligence reports across the floor. The casualty figures from the Kola front stare back at him. Hundreds of Soviet soldiers eliminated by a single Finnish sniper. The man they now call the White Death has become more than a tactical problem. He has become a symbol of Soviet humiliation. Find him. Kill him. I want his head, Stalin reportedly told Defense Commissar Kliment Voroshilov during a late-night Stavka meeting on February 6, 1940. Intelligence reports from NKVD operatives embedded with frontline units painted a grim picture. Häyhä's kill count had surpassed 500, with Soviet officers particularly vulnerable to his uncanny accuracy. The Soviet High Command deployed 3 specific countermeasures against the Finnish sniper, who had become Stalin's personal obsession. First came the artillery. Beginning February 8, 1940, Soviet commanders ordered concentrated artillery barrages specifically targeting areas where Häyhä was believed to operate. Colonel Pavel Kovalenko of the 122nd Artillery Regiment later wrote in his after-action report, "We expended over 1,000 shells in a single day targeting a single man. The force was reduced to splinters, yet somehow he survived." When artillery failed, Moscow dispatched specialized counter-sniper teams. 15 of the Red Army's most accomplished marksmen, veterans of the Siberian hunting grounds with confirmed kills in excess of 100 each, were assembled under the command of Major Ilya Grigoriev. Their mission was singular: Neutralize Simo Häyhä at any cost. We tracked him for days, recalled Dmitry Zaitsev, one of only 3 survivors from Grigoriev's team, in a 1970 interview. The snow was his ally. The cold was his friend. We would find positions where Soviet soldiers had fallen, calculate trajectories, set traps, and then watch as our own men were picked off from impossible angles. He seemed to anticipate our every move. By late February, with the counter-sniper teams decimated, Stalin authorized the most desperate measure yet. According to declassified Soviet military archives, on February 27, 1940, the Red Air Force deployed a squadron of Polikarpov I-153 fighter bombers with explicit orders to saturate Häyhä's known operational zones with incendiary munitions. The forest burned for 3 days, wrote war correspondent Vasily Grossman in his journal. From our observation post, we could see the flames reaching 30 meters into the sky. The snow turned to slush and steam. No man could survive such hell. Yet Häyhä persisted. The bombing campaigns destroyed vast swaths of forest, but failed to eliminate their target. Soviet casualty reports continue to document precision kills bearing Häyhä's signature methodology, a single shot often through the head from distances exceeding 400 meters. By early March 1940, Soviet intelligence estimated that over 800 men and significant resources had been expended in the effort to eliminate a single Finnish sniper. The psychological impact on Soviet troops was devastating. Letters intercepted by Finnish intelligence revealed that some Soviet soldiers believed Häyhä to be not human, but a vengeful winter spirit, a superstition that Stalin's commissars struggled to suppress. Scene cue: snow-covered forest at twilight. Soviet soldiers huddled around a small fire, jumping at every sound, eyes scanning the white horizon with dread. March 6, 1940. The frozen forest near Kola. A Soviet explosive bullet tears through the air, striking Finnish sniper Simo Häyhä directly in his left jaw. Blood sprays across pristine snow as half his face shatters into a grotesque mass of tissue and bone. The White Death, the man who had terrorized Soviet forces for over 3 months with a kill count exceeding 500, collapses into unconsciousness as the crimson stain spreads beneath him. Soviet commanders who had placed a bounty on his head and dispatched counter-snipers specifically to eliminate him would momentarily believe they had finally silenced the phantom who haunted their nightmares. Lieutenant Arne Juutalainen, Häyhä's commanding officer in the 34th Infantry Regiment, later recounted, "We thought we had lost him. His face was unrecognizable, a bloody crater where his cheek had been. None of us believed a man could survive such a wound." Finnish field medics worked frantically to stabilize the unconscious sniper. The explosive round had entered Häyhä's cheek, removing his left jaw and most of his left facial features in an instant. According to medical reports filed at Helsinki Military Hospital, where he was eventually transported, the patient presented with catastrophic facial trauma, missing significant portions of mandible and maxilla, with extensive soft tissue damage. The attending surgeon, Dr. Eero Saksala, noted that Häyhä's survival was itself nothing short of miraculous. For 11 days, Häyhä remained in a coma, suspended between life and death as the Winter War raged on without him. Stalin's forces continued their relentless assault on Finnish defenses, but something had changed. The psychological impact of the White Death had already been seared into the Soviet psyche. According to captured Soviet documents, Red Army soldiers had been specifically instructed to avoid certain sectors where Häyhä was believed to operate. One Soviet officer's diary, recovered after the war, contained the telling entry. Men refused to advance in daylight. They believed the Finnish devil sniper can see through forests. When Häyhä finally regained the consciousness on March 17, 1940, the war had already ended. Finland had signed the Moscow Peace Treaty on March 13th, ceding territory to the Soviet Union but maintaining its independence, an outcome that many military historians attribute in part to the extraordinary effectiveness of Finnish snipers like Häyhä in demoralizing Soviet forces and inflicting disproportionate casualties. Colonel Antero Svensson, who visited Häyhä during his recovery, later wrote, "His first question upon waking was about the war's outcome. When told peace had been declared, he simply nodded. Then he asked for his rifle. The damage to Häyhä's face was permanent and severe. 26 surgeries over several years would partially reconstruct his shattered features, but the asymmetry and scarring remained evident for the rest of his life, a physical testament to his near-fatal encounter. His jaw was reconstructed using bone grafts, but he never regained full function of the left side of his face. Marshal Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim personally promoted Häyhä from corporal to second lieutenant, the highest field promotion ever given in the Finnish army at that time. When asked years later about his extraordinary kill count and survival, Häyhä simply replied with characteristic Finnish stoicism, "I did what I was told to do as well as I could." Legacy of Terror. The Psychological Impact by February 1940, the name Simo Häyhä had transformed from that of an anonymous Finnish farmer into something far more terrifying, a phantom that haunted the Soviet military consciousness. The psychological impact of the White Death on Soviet troops cannot be overstated. Colonel Viktor Baryshnikov of the 122nd Division wrote in his field report, "My men speak of a Finnish devil who kills without being seen. Morale is deteriorating as soldiers believe they are being hunted by something supernatural." Soviet political officers struggled to contain the spreading terror. NKVD Commissioner Lavrenti Stepanov documented in his February 12, 1940 assessment, "Soldiers refuse night patrols, claiming the White Death waits in darkness. 3 men shot themselves in the foot yesterday rather than advance into the Kola sector. Desertion rates have tripled in areas where the sniper is believed to operate." The Red Army, with its overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, found itself psychologically compromised by a single man with a rifle. General Dmitry Pavlov ordered special counter-sniper teams into the field with the sole mission of eliminating Häyhä. None returned. The general later wrote in his memoirs, "We lost 17 of our best marksmen hunting this ghost. Each disappeared into the White Forest, never to report back." Soviet field hospitals reported a disturbing trend. Soldiers arriving with self-inflicted wounds, desperate to escape the front lines where the White Death lurked. Dr. Mikhail Krupin, chief surgeon at the 44th Field Hospital, noted, "I've treated over 200 men with suspicious injuries, clearly not from enemy fire. When questioned privately, many admit they would rather face court-martial than return to sectors where the Finnish sniper operates." Scene Q. Snow-covered forest at dusk. Soviet soldiers huddled around a small fire, jumping at every sound, eyes scanning the tree line with terror. By March 1940, the psychological warfare had reached Stalin himself. Frustrated by reports of one man decimating Soviet morale, he authorized extraordinary measures. According to declassified Soviet archives, Stalin ordered artillery battalions to shell any area where Häyhä was suspected to operate, often expending hundreds of shells to target a single man. The 18th Artillery Regiment alone fired over 2,000 shells in a 3-day period, attempting to eliminate the White Death. Political Commissar Leonid Bronstein documented in his March 1940 report, "The men now believe the White Death cannot be killed. They claim bullets passed through him without effect. I have ordered 3 executions for spreading such defeatist talk, but the whispers continue even among officers." The psychological impact extended beyond the battlefield. In Moscow, military planners were forced to reconsider their entire Finnish campaign strategy. Marshal Semyon Timoshenko later acknowledged in a closed 1941 military conference, "Our intelligence severely underestimated the Finnish fighting spirit, embodied most dramatically in their phantom sniper. One man inflicted damage far beyond his kill count by breaking the will of our forward units." The legacy of terror created by Häyhä would later influence Soviet sniper doctrine itself. After the Winter War, the Red Army established specialized sniper schools, with instructors specifically studying Häyhä's techniques. The White Death had transformed from nightmare to unwilling teacher for his enemies. In the quiet Finnish village of Ruokolahti, April 2002, an elderly man with a disfigured jaw passes away at age 96. Neighbors remember him as modest, even shy. Few visitors to his small farmhouse would ever guess that this unassuming figure had once been Stalin's most feared nightmare. A man whose name caused Soviet soldiers to tremble in their frozen boots. Simo Häyhä, the deadliest sniper in military history, departed the world as quietly as he had stalked the snow-covered forests decades earlier. The statistics of Häyhä's lethal efficiency remain unmatched in the annals of warfare. His confirmed 505 kills during just 98 days of the Winter War translate to over 5 enemy soldiers eliminated per day. Colonel Matti Arnio of the Finnish Defense Forces noted in a 1998 military assessment, "Häyhä's achievement represents not just remarkable marksmanship, but a perfect synthesis of terrain knowledge, patience, and psychological fortitude rarely seen in combat operations." Yet perhaps more remarkable than his kill count was Häyhä's impact on Soviet military psychology. General Kirill Meretskov, who commanded Soviet forces during parts of the Winter War, wrote in his memoirs, "The invisible Finnish snipers created a psychological terror that conventional forces could not counter. Men refused patrols, kept their heads down, and jumped at shadows. One man with a rifle paralyzed entire companies." The White Death's legacy extends beyond his personal achievements. Following the Winter War, sniper training programs worldwide studied Häyhä's methods. The Soviet Union, having painfully learned the lesson, developed their own formidable sniper school that would later produce legends like Vasily Zaitsev during the Battle of Stalingrad. American sniper Carlos Hathcock, who recorded 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam, studied Häyhä's techniques of camouflage and patience. Yet for all his battlefield prowess, Häyhä's most enduring legacy may be his humility. When asked in 1998 how he had become such an effective killer, he simply replied, "I did what I was told to do, as well as I could." After recovering from his devastating facial wound, Häyhä returned to farming and hunting, never seeking fame or recognition. He refused most interview requests until his final years. General Adolf Ehrnrooth, a Finnish war hero who knew Häyhä personally, observed, "In Simo, we see the paradox of the Finnish character, capable of terrible efficiency in war, yet desiring nothing more than peace and solitude when the fighting ends." The White Death reminds us that history's most consequential figures are not always those who sought greatness. Sometimes they are ordinary men thrust into extraordinary circumstances, whose natural abilities become amplified by necessity. From a simple farmer emerged a legend that haunted Stalin's military ambitions and helped preserve Finnish independence. In Finland today, Häyhä is remembered not as a killer, but as a defender, a man who protected his homeland with the skills of a hunter and the heart of a patriot. His legacy stands as a testament to the fact that, in warfare, individual determination can sometimes overcome overwhelming odds. As military historian John Keegan wrote in 2001, Häyhä represents the democratization of battlefield impact, proof that a single soldier, properly positioned and skilled, can influence the strategic outcome of conflicts between superpowers. The White Death's shadow continues to fall across military doctrine even today, a reminder that sometimes the most formidable weapon is not the latest technology, but the quiet determination of one man defending his home.